January 8, 2004. Late at night, somewhere around 11 p.m., Hasumi was on Shin Hamamatsu Station in Japan. She was done with her day and was going to travel back to her house through train. Now, the route and the train she chose were the same one as she normally used for her commute. So, tonight, when she entered the train carriage, she saw that there were five other passengers as well. But strangely, she noticed that they were all sleeping. Though it was late at night, she didn't think much about it and waited to reach home. And the train started to move along the tracks, slowly picking up speed. But after a few minutes, she felt that something was strange. Well, normally the train she took, the same one, would make a stop at station every 5 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes at the longest. But today, the train hadn't stopped at any station at all for about 20 minutes now, which was very odd. You see, when you commute on the same train every day, you know all the stops, the rhythm of the train, and the stations by heart. But today it was different. So Hasumi felt confused. And while she was sitting there pondering about this situation, about the train nowhere near to stop, the passengers who were still fast asleep, it was confusing. So she thought, why not talk to someone about it? So at 11:14 p.m., she picked her phone, went onto 2 channel and opened the thread, live reporting strange things happening around you, and wrote her very first message. It may just be my imagination, but may I ask something? And with that simple message, Hasumi began documenting the night that, according to her post, would get stranger with every passing minute. What she didn't know was that over a few hours, dozens of strangers on 2 channel would follow her updates in real time, trying to help her make sense of where she was, what was happening, and eventually how to find her way out. But before we go any further, let me tell you a little about 2 channel, because every single detail we know about Hasumi's strange journey comes from the messages posted there. So in 2004, 2 channel was a huge Japanese anonymous internet forum. Think of it as something that in some ways worked like Reddit does today. The site was divided into different boards and communities, each dedicated to a particular subject, where people discussed news, technology, entertainment, games, hobbies, relationships, everyday problems, and of course, strange and unexplained experiences. You didn't need to build a public profile, collect followers, or reveal your identity to join a conversation. You could just enter a discussion, post a message, and strangers could reply. And that is exactly why this story is so interesting. I mean, everything we know about what happened that night comes from one conversation between a person using the name Hasumi and a growing number of anonymous strangers who were following her post in real time. So at 11:14 p.m., when Hasumi posted, "It may just be my imagination, but may I ask something?" 2 minutes later, someone replied, "Go ahead." Then another person asked, "What's happening?" Hasumi wrote, "I have been riding on a certain private railway for a while now. This is the train I normally use for my commute, but it hasn't stopped at a station for about 20 minutes. Normally, it stops every 5 minutes or 7 or 8 minutes at the longest, but it hasn't stopped. There are five other passengers beside me, and they're all asleep." People started replying almost immediately, trying to find a simple explanation. I mean, it was just the start, so people thought maybe Hasumi had accidentally boarded the wrong train. Maybe it was an express service or a rapid train that didn't stop at every station. And honestly, Hasumi agreed that it was possible. She said that yes, she might have gotten on the wrong train and decided to wait a little longer. If anything else strange happened, she will tell them. But the minutes continued to pass, and the train still showed no signs of slowing down. So Hasumi told the users, and eventually some of the people following the conversation suggested that she check on the conductor. And of course, that was very reasonable. She could easily ask the conductor or driver about this strange situation. And by this time, it was 11:44 p.m. So Hasumi replied, yes, the train still didn't seem to be stopping, so she was going to go and have a look. And she went and called the conductor. No reply. She knocked on the window, still no reply. So a few minutes later, she came back to 2 channel with an answer. But it only made things stranger. She said there was some kind of blind or covering over the window of the conductor's compartment. She couldn't see the conductor and she couldn't see the driver either. So someone on the 2 channel then suggested that she try knocking on the window, and Hasumi said she did, but there was no response from the other side. At this point, the people following her post wanted to know if she could see anything outside the train. Maybe a station sign, maybe a landmark, anything that could tell them where she was. And she started looking frantically for any signboard inside the train, the route list, or any sign or landmark outside the window. But there was nothing. And as she was trying to focus outside the window, the train got all dark because it had entered the tunnel, which was the strangest that has happened so far. It was little past midnight now, and people on 2 channel were asking for update. They were now getting worried for Hasumi. The train had passed through a tunnel, and after coming out of it, it had started to slow down. And that's when Hasumi told the people of 2 channel. She said that the train slowed down a little after coming out of the tunnel, but usually there aren't any tunnels on this route. And she said it looks like as if finally the train is going to stop. So Hasumi tried to look out and check which station they have stopped at. She said the train had stopped at a station called Kisaragi. And now, with the train standing still, she asked the strangers following her story one simple question: should I get off? By this point, more and more people on 2 channel were following Hasumi's situation. The thread had become a live group effort. So the replies began coming in quickly. Some told her to get off the train and find out where she was. Others wanted her to stay on and ride all the way to the final stop. Now, everyone seemed to have a different suggestion, but they were all trying to make sense of the same impossible situation. And with all this, Hasumi made her decision. She got off the train. But after getting off, Hasumi looked here and there and realized it's not over because the station was unmanned, completely deserted. There was no staff station in sight, no one waiting on the platform, and no familiar faces around her. And above all, the other passengers from the train hadn't gotten off with her, not a single one. They were still sleeping. For a moment, Hasumi considered getting back on the train. She started looking for a timetable, but she couldn't find one. The train was still standing at the platform, and she thought maybe staying on it would be safer than remaining alone at a station she couldn't recognize. But before she could make up her mind, the train pulled away. Now she was stranded at an unmanned station called Kisaragi alone, with no timetable, no familiar surroundings, no clear idea where she was, no sight of a human, and a growing number of strangers online who were just as confused as she was. She could not make sense of what was happening, so she again asked people for help. She asked people about the station, and people started to search for Kisaragi Station, checked railway maps, and tried to find out where on the line she could possibly be. But there was a problem. No one could find a station by the name Kisaragi. At first, Hasumi thought she could simply leave the station and find a taxi. But when she stepped outside, that plan quickly fell apart. By now, it was 12:41 a.m., and she posted again saying there was no taxi. And in fact, there was nothing around her at all. And people following her story were throwing out every suggestion they could think of. They said, call the police, find a taxi company, look for a public telephone, check whether there was a police box nearby. Others were still trying to find Kisaragi station themselves, searching online and checking maps. But the more they looked, the more confusing the situation became. So they asked Hasumi to recheck the station name, as nobody was able to find a station called Kisaragi. And Hasumi checked again and again, yet undoubtedly the station was called Kisaragi. That's what the signboard said. Then Hasumi called home and asked her parents to come and pick her up. But again, the same problem. Even her parents couldn't find out where Kisaragi station was. So they told her they would look it up on a map first and then come for her. But by then, Hasumi was clearly frightened. I'm kind of scared, she wrote. One person suggested that she simply leave the station and look around. Another pointed out that because it was a railway station, there had to be houses or something nearby. So after waiting for some time, Hasumi decided she couldn't stand there and wait anymore. She has to keep moving in case she would find someone who could help her out there. It was almost 1 a.m. in the morning now, and she was continuously posting and talking to those strangers. She tried to search for information about the location, but her phone was giving an error. At this point, she was so tired and confused that she wrote, I just want to go home. And people asked her to walk a little and look around. So she started walking, hoping to find somewhere, anywhere that looked familiar. But as she moved farther away from Kisaragi station, the surroundings didn't become clearer. In fact, she knew that she was getting farther and farther from the help she had been hoping to find. And a few minutes later, she gave another update. There really is nothing nearby. I can only see grassland and mountains. But I think if I follow the railway tracks, I can find my way home. So I'll do my best. Thank you, even if you think this is made up. Can I ask for your help again if I get into trouble? And of course, people were deeply invested at this point. They were worried for her. So they wanted to know if she has reached home safely or not. And they told her to keep them updated. So Hasumi started walking along the tracks, hoping they would eventually lead her somewhere familiar. But instead, the night became even stranger, and suddenly she heard sounds in the distance. Something like drums mixed with the sound of bells, and she had no idea where they were coming from. She told the users on 2 channel about the sounds, and they grew more worried. They urged her to be careful and tried to figure out where she could be hearing that. Some suggested that there might be a festival nearby, but Hasumi was becoming increasingly frightened because the sound seems to be coming closer, and people had mixed responses now. Some people wanted her to go and check from where the noise is coming. Maybe she could find some help. Others were against this idea, thinking it's dangerous and she should keep moving other way or else she might get into big trouble. So Hasumi kept moving and then suddenly she heard someone calling out to her from behind. Hey, it's dangerous to walk on the railway tracks, so don't do it. Hasumi felt relieved. Finally, there was someone there. Thinking it might be a station employee, she turned around, but stopped dead. Standing about 10 meters away was an old man with only one leg. And while Hasumi was trying to think who could it be, the man disappeared. Just like that. And Hasumi was alone once again. And moreover, she was frightened than ever now. On the other hand, the sounds of drums and bells were getting closer. And now Hasumi was frozen with fear. She had just watched the only person she had seen all night disappear right in front of her. And the 2chan users were as bewildered as Hasumi. They were now throwing suggestions left, right, center, and while they were discussing over what she should do, something else happened. Hasumi fell, and now she was injured and bleeding, and one of her heels had broken. But even then, she made one thing clear: she was still alive and she didn't want to die. Eventually, she managed to call home again, and she told the users that her father was going to contact the police for her. But right now, she was alone, and the sound was still there, and it was getting closer minute by minute. So, with nowhere else to go, no hope at all, Hasumi pushed herself forward until she finally reached the tunnel. It's 2:45 a.m. by now when Hasumi posted that she had made it to the entrance of the tunnel. The name written there was Isanuki. So she gathered what courage she had left and decided to go through the tunnel. Now the users got frantic. They told her walking in the tunnel is very dangerous and life threatening. I mean, what if the train comes while she is inside the tunnel? But Hasumi thought it to be the only way, and she promised the people waiting online that if she made it out alive safely, she would post again. And then the thread went silent. Every passing minute, the online community was getting more and more worried, asking her to text back to tell them she is safe. Then, after 25 minutes, at 3:10 in the morning, Hasumi finally posted again. I have come out of the tunnel. Someone is standing ahead of me. It looks like following your advice was the right thing to do. Thank you so much. My face is a mess from crying, so they might mistake me for a ghost if they see me. She had made it out. For the first time in a long while, there seemed to be some hope. But the people reading her messages were not relieved at all. I mean, it was after 3 in the morning. Hasumi was somewhere she couldn't identify. And on the other side of the tunnel, a stranger was standing there waiting for her. The messages started flooding in. Wait, Hasumi, don't go. Stop. That's dangerous. Someone is standing there at this hour? That's suspicious. But Hasumi was very tired at this point. So she went to talk to that person and sat with him in the car. After a few minutes later, Hasumi posted again to tell the people to relax. The person, she said, was kind and had offered to drive her to a nearby station. According to him, there was something like a business hotel there where she could stay. Hasumi thanked everyone again. It seemed that finally she had found help, but unfortunately the relief didn't last long. Hasumi was now inside the stranger's car, and the people on 2 channel were still desperately trying to understand where she was. They asked her to find out the name of the place, so she asked the man. His answer was Hina, but according to Hasumi, that answer made no sense. And then things began to change. At first, the man had spoken to her. Now he was becoming silent. The car kept moving, but not to the hotel or city. In fact, farther and farther towards the mountain. Hasumi looked around, but nothing about where they were seemed reassuring. She didn't think there was even a place nearby where someone would normally park a car. And the man beside her, he started muttering under his breath. Hasumi was scared and she finally posted one last time. It was 3:44 a.m. when Hasumi wrote her last message. My battery is almost dead. Things are getting strange. So I am going to try to escape when I get the chance. He has started muttering things to himself that I can't understand. Just in case something happens, I'll make this my last post for now. And with that, she was gone. The people on 2 channel waited for another message. I mean, throughout the night, they had followed Hasumi's journey almost step by step. They had suggested what she should do, argued over the strange things happening to her, searched for the station she said she was trapped in, and tried to help her find a way home. And now, after her final message, they waited to find out whether she had managed to escape. But no update came. Hours passed. Then more time passed. But Hasumi never posted again. No message saying she had escaped the car. No message saying she had made it home. No explanation of what happened after 3:44 a.m. that morning. Her conversation simply ended there, and for the people who had spent the night following her story in real time, there was only one thing left to do: wonder what had happened to her. Now, some people believe that the whole thing had been made up. Others wondered whether something had genuinely happened, and some simply waited for Hasumi to come back and explain it all. But as far as the surviving versions of that thread show, she never did. And that's where Hasumi's story ends. And the biggest mystery changes. Not where did Hasumi go, but rather, was Hasumi ever really lost in the first place? Because there is no verified evidence that a woman disappeared from a train that night. No confirmed missing person case had been tied to this story. And despite countless searches and theories over the years, no Kisaragi station was found. Well, that doesn't mean the posts themselves suddenly disappear. The reproduced transcript is the reason we can tell the story at all. We can see the messages attributed to Hasumi, the replies from other users, and the terrifying journey they describe. But what we cannot honestly say is that those messages prove a supernatural event happened, or even that the person behind the account was genuinely experiencing everything they described. Well, in other words, the conversation is real in internet record, but the event inside the conversation was never independently verified. And that distinction is extremely important. The original mystery remains. Someone created or documented this strange journey online, and more than 20 years later, we still cannot verify who was behind the name Hasumi. That's why Kisaragi Station is treated as a Japanese internet urban legend. And there is no independent evidence confirming that Hasumi's journey actually happened. Over the years, Kisaragi Station became one of the Japanese best known internet horror stories and inspired books, games, and films. In 2022, this urban legend was adapted into Japanese horror film titled Kisaragi Station, and the story later received a sequel, Kisaragi Station Re, that was released in 2025. And you know what's the strangest part of all? A few anonymous messages posted late one night in 2004 become one of Japan's most famous and enduring internet horror mysteries. A story that people are still telling more than 20 years later. What are your thoughts on this? Comment below and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe.